Okay, so we've had a nice set of talks talking about how ensemble forecasts are made, the pitfalls and difficulties and so on that arise. We've also heard about the impacts, particularly in Network Rail, on the lots of different extreme weathers, and we've just heard from Rebecca about making these kind of weather warnings. So we thought it would be quite nice to actually do a sort of live science event where we get you to sort of think about the weather, the likelihood and the impact, but not the impact necessarily on Network Rail or whatever, but the impact on you. What impact would it have on you and your plans? So that's what we're going to sort of try to explore. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, of course, because it's all we have to see what happens basically. But anyway. So hopefully this. Okay, so I'll start here. Now, in fact, I didn't realize this, but Cyril actually called his elf Elf Richardson, and I don't know whether the joke, it kind of passed me by for a minute, but then I suddenly realized it was totally appropriate to my first figure. And this is actually something from L.F. Richardson, which is a famous scientist. And this was his vision of actually making weather forecasts. He published it exactly 100 years ago in 1922. And in those days, there weren't the computers and so on. And so how he imagined this would take place, there would be in something like the Royal Albert Hall, and all the people would be sort of stacked around in the various different circles in the Royal Albert Hall, and they'd all be busily making calculations and sort of passing them sideways and upwards and so on to actually come up with a forecast. Now, so we're going to do a live science. Obviously, it's not going to be the same. We're not going to be making the forecast, but I thought it'd be quite nice to somehow sort of celebrate this a little bit in this kind of live science that we're going to do today. Wrong computer. Okay. So before we start, though, I thought I'd just show what we did last time. We had a live science event a few years ago, just before the lockdown, actually. So some of you may have been in the audience, I don't know, but this is just some feedback from that. It actually did sort of come out to a reasonable kind of study in the end. Some people put their names on the backs of those pieces of paper that you've got, and we sort of got some more feedback from them. What we were trying to do is get people to think of a probability threshold at which they would actually decide to go to the beach. I don't know if some of you remember that. And so we worked out what probability people would want to go to the beach. And you can see the green bar around about 0.7, 70%. They really wanted 70% chance the weather was going to be nice before they would decide to go to the beach. And asking people afterwards, why they made that decision, we came to the conclusion that these decisions, at least the audience, the Royal Met Soc audience, were actually making quite rational decisions, even though it's based on their subjective feelings about, the beach and so on. And so we were able to sort of quantify, at least approximately, the forecast performance from the user's perspective. And so it's quite nice. We often just score, 500 millibar heights and so on, but actually a score which is really directed at the users is something interesting. So thank you for those who took part last time. I'm not saying that we'll definitely make another study paper this time, but it did actually help quite a lot. So this time we thought we would try to decide where to put the tick in this weather warning. So on the bottom, we've got A, B, C, D. They correspond to the very low impact up to the high impact. You have these cards. These are called Plicker's cards. And this is a very low-tech way of you making decisions. But hopefully it will work. If you see around the edge, there are letters A, B, C, D. So the idea is that with the A, if you put the A at the top like that, you're basically going to say that you are voting for a very low impact. Okay, A, very low impact. So we're going to ask you first about the impact of a particular weather situation on you. So you have to imagine the situation. It might be, for example, you're going to be traveling. You might be organizing a meeting, lots of people coming in. You might be sitting at home in the basement, having no interest in the weather at all. You know, obviously there's different impacts. So once we've done that, we then also have A, B, C, D running up the likelihood axis. And if you think that it's going to be very likely, you turn it to a D. And so that would be a D. And so then your tick would go in that box there. So exactly what Rebecca's doing, but we're all going to try and do it and see if we can guess exactly. Maybe good to see how it relates to what the Met Office's warnings were. So this is actually a 7-day forecast. What it's showing is the kind of North Atlantic. You can see the UK there, and then Europe. The star is basically Reading. We thought we'd pick Reading since we're all in Reading today. You can see the winds, the low-level winds with the vectors there. You can see the height fields in terms with the contours. And what you see in the shading is the uncertainty in the forecast. And as the forecast goes forward in time, the uncertainty builds up, just as Linus was showing. You gradually get more and more uncertainty, so darker blue colors appearing. So towards the end of day 7, then there's quite a lot of uncertainty. You can see at the top there's a timer which is counting downwards. We're interested in time 0, so we're looking at T0 basically, and we're interested in what's going to happen in Reading at that time. Now, you'll see that little target there. You'll see those targets appearing occasionally. See one up in Greenland there and a big one in north west Scotland. This is a sort of experimental way of trying to show the probability of very strong gusty winds. You see, if you look at that bottom right, then you've got those kind of concentric circles, and they're shaded according to the colors along the bottom. The outside color relates to, it says that at least 50% of the ensemble members are above or within this range here. So in this particular case, it would be between 0 and 30 meters per second, or in miles per hour, 0 to 67 miles per hour. So that's the sort of maximum gust winds. Then you've got the 75th percentile. So that suggests there's a 25% chance, if you like, of the maximum gust being in this range here. And then the center part of the target is that the last 10%, a 10% chance that it could be, in this case, say, in the red region here. So this is the first forecast we have. And we're going to try to issue some forecasts based on this. Right. So before we do that, we're going to test out our cards just to see whether they work. So how this works is you have to hold your cards up according to what you think, and then we're going to try and populate this graph. So first of all, we're just going to do a test. Okay, so hopefully it should come up. We're going to do a test just to see whether we can actually get our tick all in the same box. Okay, so what I want you to do, it says choose medium impact. Okay, so I want you all to choose medium impact. So obviously I've got to see that side of your card. Maybe just try to tilt it a little bit down so you don't get too much reflection from the lights. Okay, so I'm going to scan the audience. Don't worry, your photos don't get recorded at all here, but so Quite amazing technology. Okay, I think I've got everyone. Right, okay. So that's the first one. We actually got, oh, it doesn't say on there. It tells me here. Okay, second question. Sorry? Oh yeah, don't worry about that. Okay, so now I want you to choose the likelihood. Okay, so in this case, I want you to choose very likely. Okay. I wonder whether we can get 100%. This would be quite nice if we can. Okay. All right. So, okay. Let's see how well we did. Okay. So what I need to do. First time is it's a bit of a slow thing, but it'll be a bit faster in a minute when we get to the other ones. So here's all your votes here. Okay. So we run a little Python script. So this is the percentages we've got. Okay. So as you can see, we got 89% of people got the right box both times. A couple of percent didn't quite get in the right boxes, and some people didn't register both times. So we know kind of what it's like. What we were trying to do is to get into 89, into the box which says 89. Okay, so that was just the test. Right, so let's try the actual one from this case here then. So you're looking for the end at t equals 0, and I want you to start to think about what will be the impact on you in Reading at the very end of that. You can also see the sort of mean winds with the arrows, and the arrow vector is up there, which says what it is at 10 meter winds. So you all had a thought about how it might impact on you? Right, so let's have a go with this one then now. So what impact could the possible wind event in Reading have on you? You have to think of what that was. Obviously, it's a 7-day forecast, maybe not quite so good as Rebecca's 7-day forecast, the heat wave. But okay, you want to hold your cards up then? There's one card that I'm not picking up for some reason. Okay, good. Thank you. And now, how likely do you think that wind event will be for you? Well, how likely do you think it will be? So again, choose A for unlikely, B for moderately likely, C for likely, or D for very likely. Hold your cards up at the back. I've got to be able to see it. That's it. Okay, good. All right. Okay. So you've all had a vote. Maybe now Keith and Liz can just ask some questions about that.
And well, Mark is processing the answers. I'm going to run around and try and find out how you voted the way you did, and just to okay, so coming up here first. So, which way did you vote? What impact level did you have?
High.
High impact or high likelihood? High impact. High impact.
Moderate likely.
And why did you choose that?
Have that bigger impact here.
Okay. Okay. So you didn't think the bogus had that bigger impact on you. So what was your vulnerability? Why were you thinking that?
Because it's sheltered. Sheltered where we are.
Okay. Right, shelves in Reading. Liz, you're
Yeah,
sure?
I'm going to ask Paul Knightley, who, well,
So I think I picked B for likelihood, which was in the. So I thought the impact would be pretty low. I mean, it has to get pretty windy, really, for me to be.
So you're in this box here.
I don't think my house is going to blow down, and I've got a new fence just being put in today as well, so that's not going to blow down. Otherwise, I'll be back onto them. And given it 7 days out, I think I put B for likelihood because the pattern looked quite active in a jet stream situation. But 7 days out, the chance of it having the low in the right place in a fast jet stream is pretty small. But then the synoptics overall are reasonably conducive with strong winds. So I thought B and B.
Any other thoughts for anyone? Okay, so that's good. Thank you very much. As you can see, this is what we got overall. So you see most people were putting in those sort of greys at the bottom left there. So sort of generally a low impact and, a low likelihood of the event. No one put it in a red. So that's good. A few people obviously already a little bit worried about what was going to go on. Okay, so let's move on then. So this is now a 6-day forecast. So we're going to go forward another day. You can still see that spot in northwest Scotland there being quite active at certain points. At the end of the forecast, then there's some spot just southwest Wales there where there looks like there's some likelihood of some gales. There was a ridge earlier on. The ridge seems to be disappearing a little bit, and we're sort of getting a bit more of a trough feature over the UK. You can see that trough coming down over Greenland, quite a bit of uncertainty generating at the end of that, and then towards the end, of course, a lot more uncertainty developing. Okay, so we're in that South Wales point, but there are some indications of some gales somewhere. Okay, so let's try again. See whether you think whether you've changed your opinion on things. So we're looking for T0. So the last day. Sorry, can't see. This is a historical event, so I'm not going to say when it is because you obviously know. Well, this is your imagination. You can just imagine that you are going to fly, okay, if you like, on that day. If that's something you want to do, think about the impact that would have on your flight. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's go for this particular case. So what impact could the possible wind event in Reading have on you now? So get ready to vote. So again, A, B, C, D for along the bottom, the impact. So if you're voting. Oh, Liz has disappeared. Oh, you're up there now, Liz. Okay, thank you. And now, how likely would you think that that event that you're thinking in your head of is going to be at the end of this forecast? So we don't know at this point whether this is going to be an event where something happens or whether it's a kind of stand down event or whatever, as Rebecca said in the past. So maybe you can ask some people now.
So I'm going to get right into the middle here this time. So you didn't escape if you're in the middle. So I'm going to come over here. So which one did you put your ticket?
Very low impact.
Very low impact. And what about likelihood?
Fairly likely, moderately likely.
What was your thinking behind that? What's your vulnerability of the situation?
I'm going to be in the library revising. It's really warm there, so it's
Good stuff.
And
Very, very diligent.
what were yours?
B and B. So changed from previous. No, lived in Reading a long time. It never really gets that windy, and I can work at home. And the only real problem is maybe having to keep my kids at home with me. So I've not practiced at that.
But I think quite important that you haven't changed your mind to seeing an update in the forecast, which is interesting.
Rebecca, could you sort of suggest what the Met Office thinking was at this time? Is there anything coming up 6 days ahead that you would have been thinking about, or?
Yeah, so at 6 days ahead, we didn't actually do anything. So we're in the grey category somewhere, as in we're not going to do any warnings at this stage. It was on the horizon, it was on the radar. Paul mentioned earlier, this is a very active setup. There was an awful lot of energy in jet stream across the Atlantic. We were seeing developments, one thing and another and another. And we had a sequence of interesting weather in the lead up to that. So it's more of a continuation of the same. We know it's going to be an unsettled, changeable pattern, but at this time, 6 days out, we're not seeing anything enough to justify issuing warnings at this stage. But it's something we're watching very closely.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, so again, I think we've lost a few numbers down here in the unlikely part. Things shifted a little bit towards the top right corner. A couple of people very worried already. I suspect that's more to do with them sort of preempting the choice of event that we've come up with rather than. Anyway, okay, that's good. Thank you. All right, so let's move on then. So we won't go through all of the days because obviously that's going to be a lot, but we'll do the next one. Okay. Okay, so that was day 6, wasn't it? We shall go to day 5 now. Okay, same question each time, so it should start getting a bit easier.
Okay, have we seen the forecast?
Oh, haven't you seen the forecast yet? Sorry, I told you this is a life science thing, you know, it's Thank you, Linus. I appreciate that. Okay, good. Okay, day 5. Okay. Still have that trough there. A few more dots appearing now, as you can see, a few more targets. See that red one in North Wales? That's saying there's a 10% chance of winds, you know, pretty strong winds there, nearly up to 94 miles per hour. So that's pretty strong. One off southwest Wales seems to have disappeared. Everything, main winds seem to be further north than the Reading point that we're interested in, I guess. Still quite a bit of uncertainty developing towards the end. Something in the North Sea there with a lot of uncertainty. Okay, sorry. Now it's time to vote. Okay. So, any impact on you in Reading? The things you're doing, whether you're going in a plane or picking kids up or going shopping or whatever. Okay, let's have a look. And how likely is this? You think this is now based on the forecast that you've seen? So you can base it on the large scale flow and the uncertainty, but also on the uncertainty in the extreme gales, if you like. Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. All right.
I'm going to come in here. So where did you put the ticking box?
Well, I went for it to begin with because I'm working from home. It doesn't make a huge impact on me, but there's something obviously going on with the wind, so it seems more likely than last time. So I went E.
Okay. Good stuff. Yeah, all makes sense.
Ken, your view changing on that 5-day forecast?
It's gone up very slightly. I already went on the previous one to the medium impact, but it's very low probability. I'm now with the trough there gone up to the moderately likely to set the second one up, the one that's 23 there.
Yeah, I think I have the same views that it's 5 days ahead. There is more likely that the event could happen. So from low, I'm going to moderate as well.
But if I'm in Reading, I'm probably going to be wanting to get home to Exeter, so the impact on me is bigger than people who are stuck in the library.
So I'm actually going to ask the person who was actually on shift in the guidance
Yes.
on this particular day, at this
Go on,
particular
Rebecca.
time when this event happened.
Thank you, that's not quite true, I was on the night shift before, so, but this was a busy week, right, so we were planning this kind of in the lead up to it, and although we're looking at Reading on day 0 at the end, we were also actually in the event interested in what was going on in Scotland a couple of days before as well, so this was going to be a busy week. This is the day we started issuing warnings on day 5 out, and we actually went for the very bottom right corner, high impacts,
This one here.
but a very low likelihood, yeah. That was probably my flicker, by the way. And the reasoning for that is we could see there were some solutions, some models, some ensembles that were coming up with something really deep and very strong winds. But in terms of where it was, they were all over the place. Some of them were in the UK, some of them were in Europe, some of them were in the North Sea, and even within the UK, picking a particular area at that time, very difficult. So we weren't confident in saying for Reading or for any other particular place, this is going to happen. But we think something is going to happen somewhere. So we want to start issuing the warning, start raising the awareness. We think it has the potential to be very high impact, but we're not confident enough to tie down a location yet. So we started with that very low likelihood of high impacts on day 5.
Okay. So we've lost our red warnings now. So that's interesting. Okay. Thank you. All right. Now, okay. So we're going to skip a day, I think, and we will go. Let's day. We will go to 3 days now. So this is the 3-day forecast. The animation gets a bit shorter. Still some uncertainty in the North Sea, but you can start to see a lot of these targets over these, some over southern Britain now as well. So a lot of greys, which is lower than 30 meters per second, 67 miles per hour, but there's a 10% chance there of something in the yellows there over southern England. Okay. Okay, so we're looking at day 3 then now. Again, same questions. What's the impact on you now you think of the event that's taking place there? Okay. Picked up 42 that time. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower, so I don't necessarily pick them all up. Maybe just try to rotate them a little bit down so there's not so much glare. And how likely is that? Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to ask one of my youngest scientists.
Great.
So when it's really, really windy, how does the wind affect you? What can't you do when you might normally do when it's really windy? Play outside with your friends, so it does have an impact on you when it's really windy. Yeah. Okay, where did you put tick in the box?
See,
Because you want to play outside with your friends.
You can't go outside, that means
Good stuff. And what about likelihood? How likely do you think it is? See. Opening on this.
So I would, from the model's perspective, we just span in the wheel. So now we are in the winter, but you also know that quite often ECMWF are making upgrades in the autumn. So you have your experience of windstorm from previous years, but you've also read on the ECMWF website that they have made some changes to the wind gas parameterization, and you don't really know how that would affect this, the forecast. So that's one uncertainty you might face in this situation. I want the issue whether the 18 are.
Any other scenarios that people have got in their mind that they're thinking of in terms of the impact, particular events and things that they're power cut? Okay, that's something important to you. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes, please.
Hello.
Hi.
All right. So, oh man, this is loud. Okay. I put it at moderately likely because the models are now uptrending. Like every run, it gets worse. Like wind-wise and like the scope of it. But I put my impacts as very low because Reading still seems quite unlikely, and South never gets anything interesting. So yeah, that's what I did. Plus, I live in a well-constructed home. I have anchor bolts, so it can't get slapped. So yeah, should be good.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, good. Okay, so we're going to go to day 2 now. Okay, so this is a much shorter forecast now. So you can see this trough really developing now over southern UK. Some chance of perhaps some cyclogenesis going on, but still some uncertainty over the North Sea region here. You can see just around the Isle of Wight there, there's a blob of quite high, right into the red. So you've got a yellow, orange, red targets at that bottom there. That's a bit away from Reading though. Okay. So you've got made up your minds? Okay. Okay, so are you ready? Very low impact, medium impact, or high impact? Thank you. 43 that time. And how likely? Okay, thank you.
I'm going to come in here. So, where's you put it?
I thought it would be high impact, mainly because I was fearful that to schools, which is high impact. I still think it's a couple of days out, so I wasn't willing to put the the top category on the likelihood yet, so I went one down. That.
It's interesting actually when you ask emergency responders what they really want to know is are schools going to close? Because getting all the staffing in for blue light services and so on, that all gets affected if the schools are closed. It's actually the main thing that emergency responders want to know.
So I said medium impact, so C category, because it's clearly getting windier, or the chance of it being windier. But if you look at Reading, the wind gusts were still on the lower side, it was still in the yellows. But near the coast, it was the higher, so not really high impact yet. And in terms of likelihood, increasingly likely now. So I was in the C as well, so I was in the box with 34.
I put higher impact because although I live just outside Reading, our power supply is on overhead wires, and every time the wind gets above about 10 knots,
Okay.
and
Yes.
I'm thinking this looks very like previous windstorms where we've ended up with power cuts between 8 and 12 hours.
Okay.
So the impact would be maybe we want to think about getting the primer stove out, make sure we've got some shopping in.
Rebecca, how was it looking for the Met Office guidance unit?
Thank you. First, I would say that we're considering impacts across a wider area than just Reading. So this is probably where some of the differences are coming from. We're concerned about impacts for the whole of the country and for lots of different people and businesses and responders. We went up to Amber on day 3, so 3 days before the event, which was yesterday in the way we're doing it now. We kept it for Reading at Amber on this day. By this time, we're pretty certain something's going to happen, but there is still a bit of variation, a bit of spread as to where the greatest impacts will be. In fact, on day 2, there was a red warning issued, but it was for parts of South Wales and Southwest England at this time, and we stayed in the amber for here for now. But by this time, it was clear something really quite interesting was going on, and our chief forecaster by this time, the day before, was describing it as potentially the most significant recent windstorm across parts of England and Wales.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll move forward now to just one day before. So it's a very short animation now. You'll see that most of the uncertainty has now disappeared. It's just the sort of pale blue everywhere. There's a very strong wind just off, well, just on the south coast there. You can see that even the 25% is in the red region there. So particularly more likelihood down there. And even, around about Reading, even there, the 25% is in the orange. Over Western Island, you can see some extremely large values. One there, which is completely purple, which means that even the 50% of the ensemble members were right in this category here. So, okay, so you want to decide on how you're going to vote. So this will be the last vote. So you have to make this one count. Okay, I hope this is going to work because the questions are already loaded somehow. Okay, all right. So impact for you now. So where do you think? I can't pick your one up. Oh, that's it, I've got it now. Okay, good. And how likely? Good, thank you.
Okay, on the front here. Go to stage one. What can I say?
I've gone for DD.
So you're in the red category. Anyone else?
Well, I've stayed at moderate, a fairly low impact. Looking at we do have overhead cables from electricity, but in 20 years they've withstood all storms. So I've gone for lightly but moderately low.
What are you going for now?
Unlike what's gone before, I think this is going to be a fairly eventful event, but not quite a high risk. The moderate impact and the moderate light.
So that where the number 2 is here.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I see there's a lot of people now, 30% of you are going for the red box at day 1.
They don't leave it ready.
Does anyone guess the event?
What did you do, Shanti? Did you?
I went for moderate to more.
Oh, okay, all right. Go on then, Rebecca. What was the sort of final 1 day out guidance?
My understanding is that 1 day out is actually the day of the event, and we escalated to the red, the high likelihood of high impact, at 3:45 in the morning. Got a bit of comeback from that. Please don't go red in the middle of the night. But better that than waiting till it was happening. And we did indeed see some very significant impacts. Perhaps not for Reading. I don't know the details of what happened here, but I know Mark has some pictures of more wider impacts from this event.
Okay, so well, let's just. This is actually what basically happened. This is the very short range here. So extremely high winds off the Needles in the Isle of Wight. Got a gust there, 122 miles per hour, which is a record for England. This was actually Storm Eunice, which I'm sure many of you will be familiar with. Even when it came to Reading, there was a lot of wind. The maximum observed gust at Reading University was actually 26 meters per second, so sort of in this range here. But I suspect Linus might have a comment about that. So
we've discussed quite a few of the windstorms around Reading, and Reading University seems to always be a bit lower than what our model predicts in this type of situations. So, and this is the Reading University, so where there's more shelter than was expected by the tile in the model, might be the case.
yes, so this was actually the progression that happened in reality for Reading, as Rebecca said. So starting off at day 5 down there. Day 3 moving up here, so just going straight up up the end there for Reading there. So interesting, and obviously it depends on the impacts that you're perceiving for this kind of event here. So this is the kind of thing that happens with Storm Eunice. I don't know, is Brian around, or did he have to? He's had to go. Oh, okay, that's a shame. Some pretty amazing things happening with again I've got another picture of a trampoline flying through the air, but there are disruptions. There are lorries turned over, a lot of electric cables down, lots of problems for rail. This was something like a 300-year-old tree that hit a house. It pretty destroyed the house by the looks of it, and of course even the O2 had its roof ripped off. So it was a pretty big event. For Reading itself, and maybe it relates to what Linus was saying, there's actually a famous statue in Reading, which relates to Reading's relationship with another country in another town in Germany. I can't remember which one it is, but you can see that was completely blown down, and So the bottom plot there shows what happened to that. So even in Reading, it was a pretty big event here. So, well, thanks very much for that. Okay, here.
Sorry, just sort of something else to mention. Pre-heatwave, this was the longest lead time at which we ever issued a high impact warning as any likelihood, 5 days out. So that in itself was significant. And the fact that it came off was perhaps a bit of luck in some ways. But properly early on, properly at the beginning of this week, we were seeing some solutions with really very extreme winds. And the difficulty was always how likely would that be for any given location within the UK. But I was on shift at the weekend before day 6 or something, and I remember looking at this with a colleague and seeing one solution that brought a proper deep bullseye low right across the UK and saying, even back then, gosh, if that comes off, we're going to go red. And we watched that progression for the next week as a kind of a textbook escalation almost. In some ways very satisfying, as horrible as it was.
Could I just make a little comment? Because this reminds me actually of a talk I gave in this room at the predictability seminar about 25 years ago, when I was thinking about ensemble capabilities to predict high impact events. And one of the arguments I gave in that seminar was that we should always expect very high impact events to appear first in a probabilistic prediction as a low probability of that high impact event. And therefore that we should be structuring our sort of warning strategy to work in exactly this way that we've just seen, to start with a low probability of the high impact and then sort of work up that column. And there's some good reasons for thinking that, in as much as the argument I gave then was that a high impact event required a number of things in the atmosphere to come together in the right way. And it's actually, if you take an ensemble forecast, even supposing that the deterministic forecast, the control forecast, says that that's what's going to happen. If you then make the perturbations to that ensemble, all those perturbations will take it away from that. They're more likely to generate something less severe than more severe. So you should expect that thing to only come together correctly in one or two members of the ensemble. So it's a fundamental thing with that predictability, I think, that we should expect warnings to work this way. And this is a really nice example. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. Of course, Linus showed some examples where it can be problematic, but I guess that's what we would like to work towards. As we develop the forecasting systems, that we get perhaps with more ensemble members and so on, you can get smoother probabilities developing. Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you very much. I hope that was useful and interesting day for you. If you want to put your email address on the back of the card that you voted for, we'll have to think about whether we take this further and so on, but we would just use the email for contacting you about some of what your thoughts were and so on, maybe. So feel free to do that. Just remains for me to say best wishes from the Royal Met Soc for the Christmas, and thanks to ECMWF for hosting. I should perhaps say, instead of let it snow, so we'll see what happens. Okay, thank you.